And so, Sammy, this is the same thing that I was saying yesterday with Tyler Scott. Is that you have to dig pretty deep if you're going down to make note of somebody's celebration, that their celebration was a little bit too earnest. And so, and again, to kind of reiterate the points we were talking about yesterday, if you were so anxious to victory lap anything that's going on with Caleb Williams, I think that speaks volumes of how good he is or how good you expect him to be. Because if you clearly thought that Caleb Williams was going to be a bust, then you would be willing to sit back and let it play out. You wouldn't feel the need, like, I need to get this in right now while the getting is good. It's kind of like cashing out your chips when you're at a Las Vegas casino and you're sitting there trying to, like, hey, I better cash in now before this all goes away. Because I think people are starting to see it. If you spend any amount of time studying football, watching football, and I'm convinced that a lot of the people who are promoting other quarterbacks don't spend time watching other games. They watch the Bears and then they read a box score and they're like, hey, look, this guy threw for 300 yards. Are you sincerely watching the game? Because I question people. I don't think people are. I really don't. But in any ways, we're here. We're looking forward. We got a great show. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and get started.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois, the sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank. Great show for you tonight. Greg Braggs will be joining us here in a matter of moments, but want to let everybody know that Monday nights, Greg and I get together on CHGO for CHGO After Dark this past week, and I'm assuming the shows were they're archived. Greg will be able to tell us one way or the other. But we had Draft Dr. Phil, Shane Marsaw. It was the three families: CHGO, the Tape Never Lies Network, and of course the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. All of us came together. If you want to go check that out in the archives, I'm sure it's there. You can probably find it online someplace else. Also want to let everybody know, the world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is right at your fingertips in Illinois. The Circa Sports app is sports betting the way it should be. Bet anywhere in Illinois and experience higher betting limits, better moneyline splits, more in-game betting, and the best customer service. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com and start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. And if you or someone you know might have a problem with gambling, we implore you to call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-2334. All right. Big thanks to everybody for being here tonight. And without further ado, let's welcome to the show the co-host of this evening, Greg Braggs, who was sitting there on a very, very important phone call. Is everything okay?
Yes, everything is okay. I was big timing you though. That was total big time in Hollywooding you.
It was one of these. It was this motion. It was the.
It was, and then you're whispering. That was good.
And I'm whispering like, "Oh, the bosses getting upset with you." I don't know who you're talking to. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. I do. I did want to ask the archive, the Monday night show that we do After Dark. Is that archived? So if anybody who wanted to see the three families come together, that's something that we got to do a little bit more often because that was a lot of fun. It was good to break down some of the tape. You know. Looking back, before we start looking forward to the Carolina Panthers, went through and watched last night. I don't know if other people feel this way. And I feel like Austin Booker is starting to become somebody who we need to start giving a little bit more attention to, because I'm not saying like he's changing the world, but I'm impressed every time I sit there and watch him. I feel like that is one player who I looked at that was like, that was really good. And I thought and obviously he had the interception that sealed the game. I don't think we gave Jaquan Brisker enough love for what he was able to do in that game. And you think about one of the interceptions was taken off the board. He was all over the field on Sunday.
Yep. No, you're right. And interesting you bring up Austin Booker. You're just amazing football mind. We just had Brian Baldinger on today. And so if you come over to our CHGO Sports YouTube page, every show and video and short, those are all available at your disposal. Watch Baldy bring up the very thing I asked him about, like, hey, what do you think about this defense? The first person he brought up was Austin Booker.
No way.
And that's interesting because, like, it's not like his snap count is all that high at this point. But at the same time, you are seeing what you saw in the preseason start to translate over to the regular season, and that's his motor. And he just never gives up on a play. There's a point in the game where he is, it looks like he's gotten blocked up on a pass rush. They throw a screen. He doesn't give up on the play. Backside pursuit, closes and tackles. There's a run play to the right side where he comes all the way across the field and makes the tackle. And so you're starting to see little by little, and that's what's great about a healthy environment to develop a fourth round pick in a defensive end. It's not easy to be a defensive lineman as a rookie in the NFL, but it's a lot easier when you have the depth you have in front of you, where all these expectations aren't put at your feet, like it was for Gervon Dexter last year as a rookie, right? Or Jalen Carter, right? Those guys, they come in right away and everybody wants to see instant gratification, but it's a man's league in the NFL, and they have to get in the weight room. They have to learn technique that they may not have been asked to learn, at the collegiate level. And little by little, you'll see those guys get better and better. And you're never really going to get the full picture of any defensive lineman until they start getting in their second and third year. So you have a right to be excited about Austin Booker in the limited role that they're asking him to do. And then of course, Jaquan Brisker, he didn't get defensive player of the week like Torrey Taylor did for special teams player of the week, but he certainly was a running candidate for it. And I just think all of us as content creators talking Chicago Bears football, we are severely neglecting the defense. All we want to talk about is Caleb Williams and his development. And there's this great defense on the other side of the ball that we just are neglecting, and they don't deserve that as well as they're playing. And it's exciting to see where they can go. And when we talked to Brian Baldinger earlier today, he said, hey, I think this defense is going to get even better as the year goes on. So that's exciting to hear.
It's interesting because when we talk about other teams being able to develop quarterbacks or whatever it is, the Bears are doing a tremendous job of developing the players on defense, including Austin Booker, where it shouldn't go unnoticed. Even Roschon Johnson getting a chance to develop in this Bears running back room because they built the depth right there. And at some point we're like, can we get this to the offensive line? Maybe eventually, which I think we will. But it does give me great hope for some of the other things. As much as, again, we sit here and we're hypercritical about guys like, Braxton Jones or Darnell Wright, who, again, going back and watching this game, I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better about this. Like if you spend time watching other games, and I know that fans of our team probably don't do this. So I go through and I'll be honest. I haven't watched, and I know our producers are huge Titans fans. I have not watched a down of Miami and Tennessee, and I probably should. As somebody who does this for a living, I probably will, and I need to. I get it. But I go through and I watch other games, and you're like, like this does, like the things that happen to us happen to other teams, even the good teams, where you can watch a Chiefs game and be very like, geez, what are they doing? What's this guy? Has this guy ever played football before? Like those kind of things happen. So kind of putting it through that lens, I'm not saying that Braxton Jones is the best player in the NFL. I'm not saying that Darnell Wright is a bona fide all-pro, but it's not as bad as I think that everybody's making it out to be. But it does give me a sense, because people are now being hypercritical because the quarterback that went second overall is doing pretty well, because, Caleb's not throwing for 400 yards in a win. They're like, were we giving Ryan Poles too much credit? I'm like, you know what? Like when you give the space of the NFL, how many draft picks actually do turn out and do win? That when you start seeing players like Austin Booker already starting to show a little something, when you think about Jaquan Brisker and how well he played on Sunday, and I was just so proud of him. I just was like, you know what? He looks so good. Like he is just everywhere. And I even sent him a note on Instagram, because I'll send him notes from time to time and just, hey, hey, that guy he wasn't out of bounds yet. Like finish the play. Like you need to be allowed to play football, not realizing like, God, his game was so good, like all around, like everything that he was doing was all over there. And you think back to the draft when, Ryan Poles drafted Kyler Gordon and drafted Jaquan Brisker, and all the Bears fans want to bitch about are George Pickens, who's been fine. George Pickens is okay. But when you realize that by not drafting George Pickens, we ended up with DJ Moore, which I think is cool. And then when you think about Christian Watson's another one, the people, we could have had Christian Watson. Like, could you imagine right now having Christian Watson instead of Jaquan Brisker? Like, I think that Ryan, I know that it's not been perfect. And we do need additional reinforcements on the offensive line.
Right.
But I think I've had my faith renewed in Ryan Poles a little bit, especially with Torrey Taylor doing so well. Like looking over, like, yeah, we're actually getting a pretty high percentage of picks who are coming in and contributing right now.
I don't know why anybody would be knocked off their spot with Ryan Poles yet. I don't. There's people that have never believed in him.
Yeah,
and I've never understood those people, and I don't understand the people that are off on him. I've been critical of him the last few weeks because it's clear the bet he made on the offensive line has gone bust. He tried to bet on patchworking the offensive line for one more season, and make do with what he has. Bring in Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton to try to shore up the center position and give some depth to your interior offensive line. And it hasn't worked out. You tried to roll over Chris Morgan into this new offensive coaching staff, and it took 4 weeks to find their groove in the run game. I understood the gamble because I'll never blame him for drafting Rome Odunze.
Right.
When you talk and Adam, when you talk about watching the tape, even though Rome Odunze didn't get the ball last Sunday, go watch the tape and watch just Rome Odunze. He may not be getting the numbers that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors are getting right now, but what he's putting on tape should be just as exciting for Bears fans. But until you get the numbers, most fans don't care what it says on the tape. But trust me, the team's seeing what's on tape, and the Bears are very excited for Rome Odunze. So that just goes to show you. And so for me, I understand the risk that Ryan Poles made with the offensive line, but it hasn't been perfect. At the same time, Ryan Poles has done a tremendous job building this team out. And now you have this whole season to try to get as much as you can out of this. And we all understand when they get to the offseason, they have $80 million in cap space, a number one pick a first round pick and 2 second round picks. To continue to build in the trenches. That's what they're going to do. It's as clear as day. So this isn't a 1 year, project here. This is the first year of a 5-year window.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. And I know somebody put out there like one of those ridiculous, like, hey, what if the Bears traded Keenan Allen and Khalil Herbert for the Chiefs guard? Which is like, you guys, the Chiefs are not trading off pieces of their offensive line, but the guard in question is a free agent. So I think that perhaps that's somebody that they have in mind. Cam Robinson is going to be a free agent for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Cam Robinson has a backup. I think I can't remember. I think his last name I think is Walker. And they have a guy who I think is going to be the heir apparent there. Like these are the kind of things that we need to be looking at of like, maybe we can swing a deal. Like if Jacksonville continues to fold, looking at some of their available free agent or teams like that, where you can kind of go out and be like, well, Cam Robinson's going to be a free agent. Maybe we could bring him in just as a piece to kind of just help out everybody. I think Larry Borum, I don't know when he's slated to return. There's some other things. So I understand not wanting to go, super crazy this past offseason and kind of being more judicious in an approach there. And I thought that when we started to see better usage of the running backs and using a fullback who's an offensive lineman, obviously, but like doing that kind of stuff, like going with a God's formation, however Matt Eberflus God's play. I think that kind of stuff, we might see the offensive line improve a little bit. And if Caleb can start, helping out himself and getting rid of the ball, maybe a touch quicker on some throws. I think that Tim Jenkins had this play diagnosed, or one of the guys who does this, who breaks it down, where it's like he was much better. Caleb was much better in finding DeAndre Swift out in the flat. And I think that when we were going down for the field goal at the end of the first half, I think it was, where we had to end up taking an extra timeout because Caleb took a sack, that Mark Sanchez even pointed this out. Like, you either got to throw it at his feet or lead him to the sideline to get that ball out of there and get it outside. I think once Caleb starts doing a little bit more of that, then it's going to start looking a lot better. He's going to be able to start, like, we'll be able to stretch the field better because teams will have to kind of play up a little bit. So I'm not even convinced that it's going to be terrible on the offensive line. I don't think it's anywhere near completed, but I think it's going to be very much something that we're going to be like, okay, this is not the detriment that it was the first couple of weeks of the season. But one thing I did want to kind of ask you about, though, and we didn't talk about this on Monday, and if we did, I think we just got past it really briefly. What do you think how do you think things are with DJ Moore? And I bring this up because I see other people's TikToks of people who don't follow the Bears, and they're like, this is kind of, this is a thing that, like, this is going to be a problem. Do you think there's a problem with DJ Moore, or do you think it's just, a part of the process with a rookie quarterback?
No, I don't think there's any problem with DJ Moore. And I've seen Bears fans today already taking a quote from the press conference that was said in a joking manner that he better have found me in the end zone or else we were going to have a talk. He said it in a joking manner. Bears fans, learn to have a joke, learn to take a joke, learn to laugh sometimes in your life. Too miserable.
Nope.
Too often, too serious, too much. Okay. And no, there is no problem with DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. They both have put out some frustrations that you see on TV because they want it to work. They're competitive athletes who are frustrated when things aren't going perfectly. And I'm sure look at the receivers. They had aspirations of all three receivers having 1,000 yards this year. And it's the first 3 weeks they're still trying to find timing, rhythm, and chemistry. Well, it's okay. It's okay to have goals, and it's okay that they haven't hit them. And it's okay that they're frustrated because they're trying to work through getting to that point. And I also think that another part of the equation is Shane Waldron understanding how to use DJ Moore in the right spots so Caleb Williams can get him the ball in space, and so he can do what he does best, and that's yards after the catch. And so, to me, the biggest thing is when DJ Moore talked about that touchdown pass, he was like, I was either the second or third read, and Caleb, needed to find me, and I'm glad he did. How many times has DJ Moore been the second or third read in the last 3 or 4 years, right?
Right.
So that's an adjustment. That's an adjustment, not just for DJ, but for Caleb to have somebody of that caliber to be your third option on a play. It's a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing if, you're having timing and chemistry issues. So as I've said from the start of the season, everybody has to learn a little patience, including the fans and including DJ and Caleb, and eventually they'll get there and everything will be okay. But there's no problem with what's going on here the first 4 weeks between the two of them.
Yeah, I kind of thought too, once he got that $110 million contract, that we would be able to avoid anything like this throughout the season, because you're like, well, he's getting paid. He can't be too frustrated. But I think it's actually a good thing that he's not like mailing it in or anything like that. I just think that there's been a couple of communication breakdowns, and obviously Caleb went over there and talked to him on one play where DJ didn't run through it. And, those kind of things happen. And I think that with the Chicago Bears, everything is going to be hyper hyper-analyzed, over-analyzed, or things like that, where all the body language experts are now coming out, guys with 250,000 followers on TikTok, like, oh, I look at like cherry picking moments of DJ Moore, like, oh, he's at the end of the bench here. Oh, he's doing this. Oh, he's doing, like, of course, like if you want to sit here and cherry pick these moments, that's fine. He didn't look too bummed out after that touchdown. Like, I think everything's okay. Like, it's just one of those things. I think people sometimes have a little bit too much time on their hands. Do you have, did you ask like Cole, like, did you see Cole Kmet this week? Did you even ask him about this?
With DJ? No, not anything specific to DJ. We talked a little bit about Roma Dunze, because I just told him how excited I am. That play where Caleb completes a pass to the right to Cole Kmet, and it's a nice throw, and he throws it with anticipation to the right sidelines to Cole. Well, if you watch on the tape, Roma Dunze is streaking up the field, and he beats his corner off the line of scrimmage in a way that you don't see very many receivers his size. I mean, I knew Roma Dunze was fast, and I think some people probably deceptively fast to some people that don't realize just how fast Roma Dunze is. But even on that play, I was like, wow, that is way faster than I could have ever realized. And he blew the top off the defense. And I have no doubt that Caleb and Rome will start connecting on things. I think ultimately with DJ Moore too, it's Caleb, with the miscommunications on the sidelines of how they want to fit the ball in the whole shot, as DJ Moore called it today. That chemistry is there, but I trying to figure that out will be something they got to work through. But I also think it's Caleb having to work through understanding what true NFL windows are. So that touchdown pass on the back corner or the back sidelines backside of the end zone, that the linebacker was all over him. As much as that was a mismatch, DJ Moore on a linebacker, it's not like the linebacker was still right on him. So, but he still put it right in the spot, and DJ Moore made a nice contested catch. And we saw that so many times last year with Justin Fields. And that's why Justin Fields had so much trust with DJ Moore to give him the 1,300 plus yards receiving he got. And so I think this is just a development issue with Caleb, where he's got to learn, hey, I got to put it in this spot. And sometimes there's going to be some risk involved with this throw, but I have to trust that DJ Moore is going to come down with this play more times than not.
Yeah, there's NFL open and there's Madden open, and you got to learn how to figure that out. And just to throw to Cole Kmet, where he buzzes the tower on the linebacker on that play, like learning that kind of stuff, we should be encouraged that it's coming along this quickly in an offense. It's, letting him go out there and learn this, as opposed to like, well, if you want to learn how to bowl, at some point you got to take the bumpers down. And I think some teams are going out there and being like, you know what, we're going to let our quarterback play with some bumpers out there. And when he bowls a 120, it's different than a person out there learning with no rail guards and bowling a 68. So that's the part of it that I like to see out of Caleb Williams. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And looking forward, let's talk about this contest with the Carolina Panthers, which, the Andy Dalton revenge game. Andy Dalton famously played for the Chicago Bears. I think he played for some other teams in the NFL as well. No, but I'm looking at this Panthers team, and I think that we thought it was going to be a layup coming into the season. And I think a lot of the reasons were because Bryce Young was the quarterback, who was still developing and still having some problems. With Andy Dalton, how do you, is your confidence in this game shaken at all?
I'm not overlooking this game at all. And the thing that has started to worry me here a little bit the last 2 days and hearing in these press conferences is I just don't want the Bears overlooking the Carolina Panthers because of the travel and look ahead to the trip to London.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at it from my own standpoint, and everybody at CHGO, all we're talking about is next week and what we have to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, while we're in London getting ready for the game against the Jaguars at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And so I have to imagine it's, human nature, probably a similar fashion for the Bears. They have a lot of logistical things they have to think about, flying the team out, where they're going to be practicing, how long it's going to take to get to the stadium, and all these different things. And so overall, I'm worried about the trap game because you're looking ahead for the trip to London. That being said, with Andy Dalton, he certainly has got this offense moving at a much faster pace. They're moving the ball. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, right? And then you have Chuba Hubbard, like you were saying on Monday night show, how he's really starting to play some football. So offensively, they aren't anybody to look over, but I trust our defense versus their offense. But then on the other side of the football, I think there's an opportunity for the Bears offense to make more strides against their defense. And it's at Soldier Field. So at the end of the day, you say it's the Andy Dalton revenge game. Really, the thing that I'm more concerned about is the Carolina Panthers revenge game, because they're the ones that have had to wear this trade, the heist that Ryan Poles pulled on them. And their name's been dragged through the mud because of the Chicago Bears for 2 years. So how much of a motivating factor is that for this team to one up them? And then you add in the fact that you also have Andy Dalton, who used to play here as well. All of that, I think, should be enough for the Bears to keep their antennas up. But I do have a worry that they are thinking about all the travel logistical issues that they're going to have as they look ahead to London.
Yes. Oh, London. I know it's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but that stadium was painted red a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, boy.
As our friends in North London went and beat the Spur. The Spur. By the way, Champions League's going on too, which has been excellent as well. I thought PSG was a good team, but Arsenal just handled them with no. But anyways, nobody's here for that. I'm curious though. I'm gonna have one of our researchers look. I'm sure it's probably in our research packet, which I haven't really been able to dive into yet. But like, what teams are the week before London? Like, what is there? Like, Jacksonville's gone through this plenty of times. Like, they don't have to think about this at all. For the Bears though, this is a special treat. This is like the difference between somebody who lives in California and goes to Vegas every weekend, as opposed to somebody who goes to Vegas once a year. Like, you've got to really plan and really think this out. So if I was an objective observer and this was something where, I had to take my heart out of this, like, this is a game that would concern me. Like, this would be a game for the reasons that you laid out right there of why you could make a case for Carolina going out there and winning this game. And I don't know how, as a coach, Matt Eberflus is going to be able to, fight against this. And for me, I think this is I know that we've talked about 3 must-win games already so far this season, like had to win this one. But I truly believe that this is one of those games that is an absolute must-win, because I want to see how Matt Eberflus handles situations like this. Because if this is a problem, once this team starts to get into playoff contention, they have to rise up week after week. And I think that's one of the things that kind of bothers me about the NFL is, like, it's so week to week that the unpredictability becomes the predictability of, like, you can usually tell, like, well, this team, like, oh, like, look at this game. Like, the Bills are 3-0, the Ravens are 1-2. Like, of course the Ravens are going to win. Like, yeah, because, like, the desperate team always seems to be able to get the victory. Last week, when the Raiders were down Devontae Adams and Max Crosby, like, of course they're going to win this game because everybody's writing them out. That's why I need people to start picking the Panthers. Like, pick the Panthers to win this game, because we need the Bears to get a little fire lit under their rear ends, because they need to be focused on this one. I even joked about this with Tyler on our show yesterday. Like, I don't want you talking about London. I don't want to hear about London. You have people to take care of this. You don't need to be thinking about this. You need to be thinking about beating the Carolina Panthers, because, again, it would be inexcusable to lose to this team. And for me, I'm a little concerned, and I think Andy Dalton does bring some juice, some life to that offense. But ultimately it comes down to the defense, and that's what Eberflus is in charge of. And if something happens defensively, like, whose feet does that fall on?
Right. It falls on Eberflus. It falls on the defense to win this game. It's going to be hard pressed for the Carolina Panthers defense to be the team, the side of the ball that dictates whether this is a win or a loss. It's going to come down to Andy Dalton versus Bears defense. I like our odds in that kind of a matchup. So yeah, I don't think the Bears are necessarily looking ahead. And when you talk about must wins and people are, every game's a must win. Well, that's not true. If every game was a must win, then then that means every team should have to be 17-0 in order to make the playoffs. Well, that's not the case. The Texans game wasn't a must win. You know what? Oh, why not? Well, it's an AFC road game, and it's also against, a team that was in the playoffs last year. So it's an understandable loss, but more importantly, it's an AFC road game. You got to win your home games. You certainly got to win your home games that you're favored in. That's what makes this a must win, because you can't blow the ones that are given to you on a silver platter, because you have so many tough games ahead, and it puts you behind the 8 ball. Every game like this you lose then makes more games coming up must wins that are harder to actually win. So when you lose the Colts game, now you got to make up for that one. That's a game you should have won. That was a must win. So now you got to make up for that one. At the end of the day, 10 wins probably gets you in. And if they had beaten the Colts, you're one win closer to that goal. So 17 games isn't everyone's a must win, but 10 of them are. And you got to find those 10 within your schedule. And this is certainly one of them.
Absolutely. And I didn't even think about this until you started talking, but and I tweeted this out earlier too. It was like, we got the note through NFL research. The Bears have the current longest home winning streak. You're like, oh gosh, dang it. Why I didn't even think about that. Cause now we've got Carolina at home. This screams of a trap game. This needs to be of all the things that we talk about with Matt Eberflus or whatever, he could really impress me. He could really solidify himself if he goes out there and starts winning the games that you're supposed to win.
Right.
And I think that it's been a long time in Chicago where we've been in a position where we need to win this game. And you could argue that the Rams game was like that. And you know what? They did enough to get by in that one, and they won that game. This is another one. I guess both home games this season have been that kind of situation where you probably should win these. We can't afford to be losing them. So maybe I'm putting too much pressure on one game, but I really do want the answer. I want to see, I don't want to come in. I've seen it far too often where you go into a game where you're just so comfortable and you're like, you know what? I feel comfortable. We should win this one. And then you're like, what is happening? I guess we saw it 2 weeks ago with the Colts. We're like, why are we losing to this dog-ass team? Why are we losing to a team with this quarterback? This is inexcusable. And I don't want to come out here on Sunday evening and be inexcusable again. And another thing too, and it's one thing when it's Kyron Williams or Jonathan Taylor. And as much as I like Chuba Hubbard from a fantasy perspective, it's I don't want to give up I don't want to get into the habit of giving up 100 yards to these guys. I know I said this on Sunday after the game. I was 3 of the best things that happened this weekend and 3 of the worst things. And I started, talking about we do give up a lot of yards. And we talked about this on Monday night with Draft Dr. Phil. It's I would like to see us get off the field quicker, a little bit more. I don't want to sit there on 3rd and 13 and be we're going to find a way to give this up. I really want to start shutting it down. And I think these are the type of opponents where we need to go out there and really shut them down, really be emphatic.
Yeah. You got to flex your muscle a little bit here. I mean, this is the spot. I mean, the Matt Eberflus went on a 14-game losing streak as a head coach, right?
Yeah.
And last year they finally won back-to-back games in the Matt Eberflus era. But guess how many times they've won 3 in a row in the Matt Eberflus era? Never. They won back-to-back twice in the second half of last season. They won 7 of their last 6, so they got onto a little bit of a winning, culture way to end the year last year. But at the same time this year, you win 1, you lose 2, you win 1. So you've got 2 games here before the bye and have an opportunity to win 3 in a row for the first time in the Matt Eberflus era. When you talk about trying to set the tone and change the perception on who you are as a head coach, this is your opportunity the next 2 weeks. So yes, it's a trap game, but good teams don't fall in the trap. So go out there, take care of your business at home, and then go see what's what in London.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of like when you're trying to finally put together a good score in golf, and you get that par. You don't want the double bogey after that. Bogey, not even. You try to string together pars. That's what you want to do. That's what the good golfers do. That is the one thing that's probably the most annoying about Scotty Scheffler is that he just doesn't bogey and he strings together all these good pars. And when I started
don't have the meltdown hole.
No meltdown hole. I mean, it's a big reason why too. And I started even collecting golf cards over the last couple of years with like Scotty Scheffler and Satish Thigala. And speaking of sports cards, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in all things Chicago sports. Whether you're a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, or Sky, they've got you covered with an extensive list of sports memorabilia and collectibles. In addition to their Chicago-focused items, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and players. And you know what? Like, that's the one cool thing about them. If you are into something like golf or professional wrestling or anything like that, anything that you think is a little offbeat that you wouldn't expect, Windy City Sports Cards has got you covered. All right, Greg, what do you say? Let's see if the fans have anything to say. I do know that Sammy's upset that we are dismissing the game of the year between the Titans and Dolphins. I'm sorry, Sammy. I'll watch it tonight. I'll come home, although Thursday's usually an early morning for me. Because I
should be in tank mode right now. They need a quarterback next season.
What are they going to do? Like, what are they like? Who's going to make the move for Bryce Young?
You know what we're doing right here is before every show, Sammy gets us fired up about our quarterback situation, and so now we're taking. Now the tables have turned.
This is the thing: is the Titans are going to end up winning too many games.
Yeah,
and
they blew it. They're supposed to be in tank mode right now, and they beat a Dolphins team. They shouldn't have. They should have let them have it.
The year that they went to the AFC Championship game was probably the worst thing they could have done. Was they were 9-7 and it was fun, but it's like if you would have tanked with Marcus Mariota, you would have allowed yourself a better draft pick where you could have. I forget who the quarterback who was coming out, but you would have put yourself in a better position to go out there and get it. But now they're going to do just enough. They're eventually going to go to Mason Rudolph. They're going to win 9 games, maybe sneak into the playoffs, and then all their fans will come out and be like, "Oh, you picked us to win this amount of games." Which happened that year. And I'm like, I don't want to get into it. I can go on a Titans podcast to talk about that. How about some questions, Sammy, or comments? Race to 1,000 receiving yards. DJ has 189. Rome has 166. Komet 162. Keenan Allen has 48. But you know what's funny is you need to average, what is it? What used to be 58 yards a game to get 1,000. And now there's 17. So I think it would probably be just over 50. You need to average like just over 50 yards a game. If one of these guys comes out with a banger where you get like 180 yards, then you're well on your way. So I understand that you want to go out there and have your fun and make your job. Again, this goes back to what I was talking about in the cold open. I think that everybody needs to get there's a desperation to the jokes because I feel like it's a limited time thing. It's kind of like when the McRib's available. Like you got to go down to McDonald's and get it. Because it's not going to be there for very long. Although I don't know, I've never had a McRib, but it's not one of those things. It's not like the Doritos Tacos Locos at Taco Bell, which I know are always going to be there. It's always going to be a part of the menu. But when they have those rare occasions where the Mexican pizza comes back, do they take the Mexican pizza off the menu? What do they take off the menu?
I don't know.
Whatever.
I get the same 4 things every time. You know me. If you want,
Taco Bell is the same 4 things. Like there are only 4 things on that menu, just in a different wrapper.
That's true.
How about another question there though, Sam, or a comment, whatever? Is Ryan Poles lucky or good? Sweat was a solid move, but everything else came to the credit of Lovey and the Panthers. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that. I mean, is it better to be lucky or good? But I mean, like, he's still making the deals that make that kind of stuff happen.
Well, you brought up Brisker and Gordon. I mean, that were his first draft picks. That had nothing to do with Lovey. So people questioned Jervon Dexter. That's been a nice pick now. And you look at, I know one of our questions probably is going to be about Braxton Jones. Say what you want about Braxton Jones, but he got him in what, the 5th round?
Right.
And he's been your starting left tackle the last couple of years. Can you get an upgrade there? We can talk about that here in a minute, but at the same time, you found yourself a starting left tackle for a couple of years as you were rebuilding. So I don't agree with that at all. And to take, look at this draft on its face and see that, Caleb Williams, you get because of the Panthers' fortune, sure. But then you also get Rome Odunze at 9. You can question that pick. Go right ahead. I think that you're going to end up on the wrong side of history if you do. And a lot of people question the Torrey Taylor draft pick. That took
Huh.
a lot of guts to make that pick. And well, he showed here last Sunday that he can be a very good player and a guy that really affects the game as a punter. And Austin Booker, here coming up in the 4th round, trading back in. So I don't agree with that. And to me, I think he's done a good job wheeling and dealing and being smart about how he spends his money and setting this team up for the future. And so I don't agree that it's all on Lovey. And at the end of the day, he had to make the trade with the Panthers.
Yeah.
He could have easily made that trade with any other team to identify the Panthers as the right team to make that trade. He gets that credit. So everybody acts like it's like this easy thing to do. It takes guts to trade out of the number 1 pick a couple years ago with CJ Stroud and Will Anderson sitting there and your need at defensive line. So no, I'm not going to just wipe away any credit of and give all the credit to Lovie Smith, but shout out to Lovie Smith. We appreciate the pick me up.
No, we do. But I mean, it's clear to me though, that they would have traded the number 2 overall selection to, let's say that Houston, I'm not sure that Houston wouldn't have taken Bryce Young. I know that we'll never know 100%. The Bears were not going to take a quarterback at number 2. They would have also traded that spot. Like they might not have gotten as big of a return for the number 2 overall pick, but somebody was trading up for a quarterback, and the number 2 overall pick still carries with it a pretty heavy price, to the point that I think that we at least end up with the number 1 that we had last year. And we end up with DJ Moore. We might not have the 2nd this year, this upcoming season. Like that might have come up. I'd have to look at the Jimmy Johnson trade chart or anything like that. But still, like somebody was going to make a move for the pick that we ended up with. We were not going to take CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Either one of those 2 picks, I don't think would have benefited us, because we still had our quarterback that we wanted to roll out there for one more season. Or, you also think about too, like, what if we ended up with the number 2 overall pick and ended up with Will Anderson and did some other maneuverability or just moving around? I think that I can trust Ryan Poles enough that he would have done something creative with the number 2 overall pick. So would it have meant Caleb Williams? I don't know. What if we had Jaden Daniels? Like everybody's in love with him now. Who knows? Like what's going to happen? I do know that the Bears, some of the quarterbacks on their board, I think like they had JJ McCarthy rated pretty high. Like there's a lot of different ways these things could have gone, but I think that he's done enough that he's had to engineer what has gone on. Like there was some fortune, but that's with a lot of teams. There's a lot of good fortune.
Every fan says, "Oh, it's so easy to tear a team down for the rebuild." But show me what GM had the guts to do that with the Chicago Bears. Every GM in the last 20 years or 15 years has tried to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Yeah.
And Ryan Poles, one of the youngest GMs, if not the youngest GM in football, came to a charter franchise in George McCaskey, who never likes to rebuild, and convinced George, hey, we got to tear this thing down and start back over. That took guts for Ryan Poles to execute that and convince ownership that that's what needed to be done. And so, just for me everybody, fans that try to wipe those things away as no credit given, I don't agree with that one iota.
No, not at all. And it's funny too, which one of these 2 moves, this was happening over the last couple of days, where people are talking about talking about Roquan Smith and David Montgomery, 2 players that got away. And I know that David Montgomery was offered a contract. That's fine. There is still, there's a difference between offering somebody a contract and making somebody feel like they're wanted as part of an organization. Right. And I think towards the end of that year, David Montgomery even knew, even during those last games with Justin Fields, knew he was saying goodbye to David Montgomery, because I think they made it explicitly clear that he was not part of their future plans. You could have made him feel welcome. And whether it's more money or anything like that, I think that if the Bears really were invested, listen, this will be one where I'm like, Ryan Poles, maybe we should have held on to David Montgomery. I would have liked that, but listen, we're doing okay right now. It's looking fine. Which one of those 2 guys do you think who do you miss the most?
Well, I think who do we need the most right now? I would say David Montgomery is that answer.
Yeah.
Because they're fine at linebacker. They decided not pay Roquan Smith, and they used that money to bring in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds for the same price tag. And
Yes.
so I that was the
And
right
also got a
move.
draft pick that turned into Dexter, right?
Correct. And so now, but with David Montgomery, you said, well, we're only going to offer you this much because this is what we identify as what the value is for the running back position for our organization. And that made sense to me. I had no issue with them letting David Montgomery go. A lot of fans were very upset about it because he was the heart and soul and identity of this team. And so I understand where fans are coming from there. So then the one thing that where Ryan Poles kind of went back against the grain of what his whole thought process was with David Montgomery, well, then you end up paying DeAndre Swift anyway.
Yeah.
Albeit only on a 2-year deal, but at the same time you paid him. So if it's one or the other, either you're telling Monty, hey, we don't really put too much of a salary cap onus on the running back position, but then you're going to go pay DeAndre Swift. So I can acknowledge, like, hey, if you're going to put money into the running back spot, keeping David Montgomery wouldn't have been the worst thing to do in the world. But at the end of the day, I'm not looking back. And DeAndre Swift looked pretty damn good here last Sunday. First running back with 70 yards receiving and 70 yards rushing since Jeremy Langford, not David Montgomery. So,
All right. I'm just saying.
Dude, I'll give David all the credit in the world. On Monday, he laid that dude out.
Yeah.
Laid him out. I haven't seen a smack like that from an offensive player in a long time. Laid that dude out. So, yeah, when we all saw that play, we're like, man, that'd be nice to have on this team, is a little attitude like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And it's funny because, like, Kyle Brandt was the one who brought up the Roquan thing, and everybody was like, nope, we got 3 players for that. We're fine. And then when I bring up David Montgomery, it was like, we offered him a contract. Like, fair enough. All right, we're doing fine without him. What about the Tom Brady revelation? By the way, thanks to everybody. I got 1 million views on that tweet where I said that, like, finding out after the fact that Tom Brady wanted to be a member of the Chicago Bears is like finding out that the homecoming queen was into you in high school. Maybe a little too close to home. In any event, but we already kind of know. I kind of felt like we sort of knew that. Like that.
We did.
I thought, like, right, we knew that, right? Like,
yes.
Why is everybody freaking out? Like, yeah, we knew that all along.
Right. We did. Dan Patrick had reported that in the moment. And we all but the new revelation is Tom Brady
finally said
saying it. So that's a little different. So to your homecoming queen comparison, that's like hearing from her friends that she was into you, but then 5 years later
you're at a wedding and then she confides in you and you're like, oh, you're married now. Okay. That was kind of like, whatever. And then the people are like, yeah, but what we wouldn't have Caleb. We might have won a Super Bowl, or we would. I'm like, but if we had a Super Bowl,
the butterfly effect, exactly.
If we had a Super Bowl, I would be fine. What if we had a Super Bowl and Baker Mayfield was our quarterback right now? I would take that. No disrespect to Caleb. Super Bowl is the most important thing. Although maybe Caleb's going to win us 10. Who knows? How about another question though, Sammy? Adam, what do you think of Braxton Jones struggling with opponents with strength? I think that is an issue. That is one of the things that we were hoping that would be alleviated over time, is that as he grew into his body, that perhaps he could kind of match people strength wise. I think a lot of it has to come down with, the way you position yourself. Like, you've got to have that low base. You got to get down. Like, this is one of the things, and I don't know if you've ever talked with Brian Baldinger about this, but it's like, you got to be able to, like, if you are deficient in that spot, then you got to be excellent with your hands. Like, in my limited playing experience of playing football as a undersized, tall, but undersized, like, weight-wise wide receiver, like, I always had to make sure that my hands, like, whenever I was out blocking, because we ran a lot, is always had to have my hands out in front, like always making sure, like, to pop that guy in the chest. So we need to see a little bit more of that from Braxton. But again, like, going back and watching the game from Sunday, I'm like, I don't think that he's the disaster that everybody's making him out to be. What do you think, Greg?
I'm not going to call him a disaster. And
I don't think it's a disaster.
I don't think it's a disaster either, but I certainly think that we're starting to see that position as a spot that can be upgraded in the future. And I think Ryan Poles has already identified that by drafting a 3rd round, potential left tackle in Karan Amagaji. Now, do I think Karan Amagaji has already been set up to have the keys to the car here in a few years? No, he'd have to earn that position. And, having this become a redshirt rookie year, we're not going to get any definitive answers. So I think if you enter the offseason with an opportunity to significantly upgrade that spot, I don't think Karan Amagaji is going to hold you back from that kind of a decision. But I do think that at the end of the day, that should be the decision they make. Like this offseason coming up, and we've got, 8 more games to win and a playoff for 2 games to win before we get there. But when they get there, this offensive line just needs as much bolstering as you can put into it. Everything else on this team, you've checked the box, and it's now time to put all your eggs in the offensive line basket. That includes left tackle. I mean, Braxton Jones is doing everything he can to hold his own. But when you've got Jared Verse out there blowing you up, and he's a very talented rookie, but he was blowing him up at times, to me, that the signs are there that, like, this guy's, solid, but is he great? And then it turns into a Justin Fields conversation where left tackles get paid a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, Braxton Jones has to prove that he's worthy of a contract extension. And if he's not, then you have to start looking at a potential replacement. That's exactly what Justin ran into was, hey, this isn't just about whether or not we believe in your 10-year future. This is about us having to make a decision to pay you right now. And so that's, I think Braxton's going to run into that issue. And, at the end of the day, I think he's been solid, but certainly worthy of an upgrade if you can find one.
When you sit there and you envision the Chicago Bears playing in the Super Bowl and they're going through the things, it's on CBS or whatever, and it's the players introducing themselves like, hey, Caleb Williams, quarterback, USC. Of the current offensive linemen, how many of them do you see in that moment of like, hey, here's the Bears in the Super Bowl? How many of the current offensive linemen are in that introducing themselves? Darnell Wright, tackle, Georgia. What is it? Georgia? What am I?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Excuse me. Sorry, SEC fans.
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Nate
how many of those guys?
Nate Davis. I think he went to Tennessee as well.
Yeah.
No, I would say Darnell Wright is the only realistic answer.
Tevin Jenkins, Oklahoma State.
We're rooting for Tevin. Every Bears fan to a man and woman loves Tevin. Yeah. We love Tevin Jenkins, but he's hurt his ribs. It's football. You're going to get hurt. But he's somebody that Ryan Poles said, hey, I'm not coming to a contract extension conversation at the table with you until the halfway point of the season. He was told that during the offseason and at training camp, and Tevin spoke about that to the media. We all hope he can earn that, but at the same time, why Braxton Jones is so valuable is because your availability sometimes is your best ability. And for Tevin Jenkins, every year he seems to have some kind of an injury issue. And when you're looking for continuity to develop chemistry on your offensive line, you can't have uncertainty on when guys are going to be available and when they're not. And that might be an unfair statement to make when you're asking players to stay healthy in the NFL. But at the end of the day, that's what teams are striving for.
And, and that's any job, like if you want to ingratiate yourself with any employer, you show up. And I know it's difficult because not everybody's in a vocation where you're basically in a car accident multiple times per week. But that is the thing. Like as a college professor, I tell my students, I'm like, the most important skill that I can teach you at any point is like, be available, be ready to go. And when somebody asks you to do something, you do it. And if somebody asks you like, hey, I need you to go out there and commentate on pickleball, you're like, are you a pickleball expert? Like, yep. Whether you are or not, and then you go out there and you study your ass off. I remember one time when I was a kid, I was interviewing for a job with Upper Deck, and this would have been a perfect time to do a segue to Windy City Sports. But I was interviewing with a job with Upper Deck, and they're like, yeah, we have somebody who we need to do NASCAR with. And I spent 2 weeks doing NASCAR prep. Jeff Gordon, I knew everything about Jeff Gordon. It was that era. and all that stuff. And then when I got into the interview, they're like, yeah, it's actually for the NBA. And you're like, oh, son of a B. And they're like, hey, like, how many rings has the Celtics won? And I'm like, I don't recognize any of them. Like that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, none of the Bill Russell ones count to me because there was like 4 teams. But it's like being available and like doing that. I know that was a weird tangent, but it's like, you got to be available and ready to go. And, you know, if they need you to go from right or left or whatever it is, and nobody's rooted harder for Tevin Jenkins than me, but at some point I'm still hopeful. I'm still optimistic he's going to be able to go.
When I tore my ACLs, guess who went back to work the next week?
Yes.
When I had surgery on my knee,
there it is.
5 weeks ago, guess who was back to work 2 days later? Guess what? Because if you don't, then there'll be somebody standing there to replace you. Nobody is feeling sorry for your sorrows. You need to go out there and get it done. No matter how, you got to do it.
Yeah.
That's the work ethic you got to have.
I had to ask, I'm like, am I still coming back to the NFL Fantasy Live on Tuesday? Because I had to miss, what was it, yesterday? And they had Cynthia Freeland in there, who I'm sure did an excellent job. So I had to be very careful. Like, hey, you got to be careful with this stuff. And it's just like, you know, it is what it is. Is there another question or comment we can squeeze in before we get out of here, Sammy? Because speaking of which, what's the first position on the offensive line to be fixed? Center, left guard, right? I think we're casting a wide net. I think center, both guards, and left tackle.
Well,
are all going to be addressed.
Well, first position to be addressed. So then your question is who you're getting in free agency.
Yeah,
because free agency becomes before the draft, and depending on where the Bears are picking, you don't know who's going to fall to you. And so that's the chess game that Ryan Poles is going to have to play. Let's say they're picking, I don't know, you know, I'm just throwing a number out there because I don't want to give away what I think they're going to finish on the season.
28th.
Let's say that, yes. Let's say they're picking 32. No, let's say they're picking 16. You know, you don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just throwing a number out there. Relax.
All right.
And so you still don't know who's going to fall to you at 16. And so then that changes how you approach free agency. I've always said, Adam, that the draft should be before free agency.
Why isn't it? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I you want to know why?
Why?
I'll tell you why. We got a network, and we got content to fill. The draft, I think, used to be in December, but they're like, oh, and then once they made it an event, they're like, oh, we build it up. And then free agency really became a thing because they're like, well, we need something to do before. We need free agency before the draft because we have like programming and content. Like you got to build these tent poles. That's what the NFL is all about, is tent pole events where it's like, you know, the season's the season. So the tent pole, the granddaddy of them all is the Super Bowl. Then the next tent pole event is the combine. And then the time between the combine and the draft was too vast. So they're like, well, let's do free agency. Because I remember when I was working for when I was just on the desk at NFL.com in 2007, like I remember taking off because I wanted to go to March Madness. I was going to go to Vegas to go watch all the March Madness games. Like, whoa, you're going to take off during free agency? I'm like, oh my God, are you guys making this a thing? Like, gosh dang right we are. You're like, oh, son of a B. But if I remember correctly, like this was back in the day when they used to do like Plan B free agency and everything, like when they would, you know, the bottom 6 guys of your roster would become available every year. This is like how guys like Jay Novacek ended up joining the Cowboys because the Cardinals in their infinite wisdom were like, we can't find a spot for Jay Novacek. So they would do that. And like, that was a thing. Like you would just kind of like, you would do Plan B free agency, like around June, like all the June cuts. Like, I think that used to be the time, like you go through, you draft, then you do your cuts, but then they're like the league year ends in March, at the end of March. So they kind of coincide it with that. And it's a big thing. Like you could do it, but you would actually be hurting NFL programming and they'll never do it. Like to me, like the draft is such a huge deal. Like, we'll stretch out move the combine back a couple of weeks, build up the anticipation for the combine. Don't do it so quickly. Then have the draft, and then do free agency in June or even July. Have it compete with the NBA's free agency. And then you got something cooking. Actually, I'll just go. We had a town hall with Roger Goodell that I blew off the other day. I should have gone and been like, let's do this. Let's do free agency. You do the draft, then you do free agency in July. Although I guess like players would want to know where they're living and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is like,
I guess that's a concern. I don't care about that.
All the collusion that would take place before the draft.
That's already happening.
Exactly.
It's already happening.
That's why it's impossible for our diabolical plan to work, because even before the draft, they'll say you'll have Shams and everybody else dropping the who's signing where before the draft even starts.
I mean, even that too, like with the NFL free agency, those guys can't sign until April 1st, but we're always doing it right around St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
And then there's legal tampering. And then it's like, they know. That's why, like, when they finally, like, when they pull back the window, they get somebody like the Bears to announce quickly that, hey, DeAndre Swift's coming in, because they've already had the conversations with Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley's like, they couldn't make amends, or they couldn't come to an agreement. So he was going to be going to Philadelphia or whatnot. Although I know there's a reality TV show that was trying to show that was whatever. In any event, listen, we've, got a reminder, everybody, too. If you want to have the best sleep ever, which we don't get any sleep in the NFL because we have all these tentpole events, but Manta Sleep is the only mask designed and optimized for the deepest possible sleep in any environment. 100% blackout for deeper sleep, infinitely adjustable for personalized fit, absolute comfort. Visit mantasleep.com and use the code SICKBEARS for 10% off. And this is the time of the week where I can't use my sleep mask because I got to get up early, because we record NFL Fantasy Live super early tomorrow. And then I'm on GMFB on Friday. That show's live. And then I got to wait around. Oh, and then I do a Friday show. We might have Cynthia Freeland coming in on Friday. So be sure to check back for our weekend shows, Braggs. I know you don't care because you got your own thing going on with CHGO.
I do care.
Our weekend shows have been, the last couple have been bangers. We had Mike Silver on last week, had a great conversation. Like, it's cool to get that outside perspective. So we're hoping Cynthia will come on with us this weekend to talk about some things. I know she's a Lions fan, but it's good. What do you got coming up with CHGO?
Oh, man, we got all sorts of stuff here coming up. One more show tomorrow before game day on Sunday. Obviously, we always do our pre and post game shows. Alex Brown and Lance Briggs with their Briggs and Brown show coming up on Sunday after our post game show. They do their own post game show, which I'm a host of, and it's a lot of fun to work alongside those two Bears legends. And then we hit the road. Sunday is a crazy day for me, Adam. I'm tailgating. I tailgate in the morning.
Yeah.
Going to be in the tailgate lot at 5 a.m. before the sun even comes up.
Do you drink? During this tailgate?
Last year I did a little bit, but now with
there's too much going on, right? Yeah.
So much going on, and I have to host a show that's, 12 hours later. There's just absolutely no point whatsoever. So no drinking. I do the tailgate from 5 a.m. till about noon. Then we watch the game at the studio. Then we do our post-game show. Then the Briggs and Brown post-game show. But my wife and I on Sunday after the Panthers game, after the post-game show, are getting on a plane and heading to Paris.
Paris.
We're going to go to Paris for 3 days and then come back to London and hang out with our fans that are traveling over with us. So we're really excited for that. I'm really excited to take my wife over to Paris and take all that in.
Oh man, I haven't been to Paris in the longest time. I hope you enjoy that. That should be a lot of fun. I'm very envious of you, but I will tell you, I have now booked all my flights for Arizona have been booked. I'm flying out of Long Beach, but flying home because of cost wise and stuff, flying home to Orange County. So I'm going to hit 2 different airports. Well, 3 if you count Sky Harbor, for the Arizona. So if anybody's taking the 7 a.m. bird out of Long Beach for the Bears Cardinals game, let me know. I know it says 6:55, but you can't take off until 7. It's kind of like midway, but it's like you cannot take off before 7. We're on the tarmac waiting, watching our watches, and then like, oh, here we go, 7 a.m. and then just take off. But then I got to fly back. So if anybody's taking that early bird out of Long Beach, I know there's going to be Bears fans on that flight. If you're watching this show, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I need a ride is what I'm getting at.
So you're gonna come hang out with us, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna come. Yeah,
we got weeks. We got weeks before this, but you gotta come to our hangout before we walk in.
I need somebody to pick me up at Sky Harbor too.
I'll get my guy Matthew Gregory to pick you up wherever you need.
Beautiful. But in any event, thanks so much for being here as always. The weekend show, the Sick Podcast. Oh, look at that brick.
The brick missed me. See that?
The brick.
They
miss you.
I miss the brick, to be honest with you. I love doing this sports media stuff, but there's nothing quite like laying brick from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. every day and seeing your work. Every house was different. There was never one brick that was the same. I love bricklaying.
That had to be amazing. And I love architecture too. And I know that when we were outside, like obviously the CHGO studio is amazing with all the brickwork. And there was a building down the alleyway where you're like, I don't know how long that chimney's going to hold up. I love looking at that stuff too. Like I love architecture, and we can take an architectural tour of Chicago next time I'm out there because I love it. But yeah, I want to do that. I want to talk about that. But in any event, thanks to everybody for joining us here this evening. We'll be back on the weekend edition. Of course, we'll have a post-game show after the Bears game on Sunday, followed by CHG. Are we not doing CHGO After Dark on Monday then?
You guys can. I'll be embarrassed. I'll talk to Corey about it. No, but you
let me know. If you need me to host it with Woot, let me know. And
that would actually help me out.
We'll figure something out.
I haven't even thought about that. But yes, you can host it with Corey, and then I'll just stay out of it. It'll make it a much better show.
Perfect. My goal of drive. No, I'm just kidding. But any event, a lot of cool stuff coming up. So we'll see you all over the place with content everywhere. So until that time, bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcast. Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois.